Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, March 17th. Happy St. Paddy's Day for all the Irish and everybody who feels like they're Irish today. If you've been listening for a while, you know I'm a sales coach and trainer. I work with both individuals and organizations to help them get measurable and sustainable sales increases. And I can't remember whether it was 2 or 3 years ago, I formed the Sales Pro Network to elevate the profession of sales, to give salespeople a place to come and hang out, network with each other, ask questions, get advice and coaching. And every Friday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, we either do a live training or a live interview with someone who can add value to the profession of sales. And once again, my friends, I'm not letting you down. We've got somebody great for you. If you're watching us live, please say hello in the comments. If you're watching us live on Facebook, but have not connected your account to StreamYard, it's just going to say Facebook user. We won't know who you are. So if you do say hi, please include your name. If you have any questions for our guest today, please put those in the comments and I'll be sure to pass them on. And finally, if you're watching us on the replay, please say replay in the comments. And with that, we're going to get to our guest. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Michelle Masters. Michelle is an NLP trainer and a master practitioner, and she's the author of a book I can't wait to hear about, Money Magic. I think we all want some more magic in our money. Money Magic, clearing your path to money, time, and happiness. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Jeff. It's
So
very
good.
early here, so if I look like I just rolled out of bed, that's not far from the truth. So, but happy to be here.
Good, and I'm happy to have you. Why don't you maybe give us the 2 or 3 minute version of your background and what brought you up to this point, and then I've got a bunch of questions I want to ask you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was kind of wandering in the wilderness, both literally and figuratively, for quite a few years, trying to figure out what I actually wanted to do, what had real meaning for me. And then in 1994, someone put a flyer in my hand for a free seminar, and it was on NLP. And I went, and within half an hour, I realized, oh, this is what I want to do. And I've been doing it ever since. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was it that so attracted you in that seminar?
Well, I was really wanting to do something that had, like I said, like I had meaning, and for me, and I had briefly considered a career in counseling or therapy, but just listening to how things were for people, not being able to change much was really, it just sounded like way too much frustration. But in this workshop, even in just the little techniques, the little kind of parlor tricks they were doing, in the first half hour, I could actually feel things change. Like in my body, I could feel things change emotionally. And because I think therapy is wonderful and a great tool. And I had done 4 years of it and got a lot of self-acceptance, self-understanding, self-awareness, emotional vocabulary, so much good. But the patterns didn't change. And so in this, when I could actually feel stuff change, I was like, well, if they can do that, and with these little things, what can they actually do? Right. And so I found out, and I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. Good morning, Ben Gibbs, one of my favorite salespeople. Always glad to see that you're here. Good morning, Don Levine, our executive recruiter in the Sales Pro Network. So I think almost everybody's heard of NLP, or at least most people have, but I'm not so sure everybody knows exactly what it is. But what is NLP, and how can salespeople use it?
Yeah, NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. Horrible name, not but computers were just coming online in computer programming when they did it, so they were wanting to make it sound more techie. But it is what it is it's not based on any theory. What they did was these really bright guys looked at people who were getting results that nobody else was getting. So like therapists who'd been through the same training as everybody else, but somehow their clients were changing, or teachers whose students had much different results. So they looked at people, business people, they looked at therapists, they looked at anybody who was actually excelling in a way that nobody else could figure out. And they kind of watched them and boiled down what they were doing and boiled it down until they could find the difference that was making the difference, is what they called it. So the things that those people who were getting exceptional results were doing, and they studied salespeople as well, that nobody else, that they weren't even aware of necessarily, but that made a huge difference until they could replicate the results. And so they stole from the best. And so it wasn't based on theory. It was based on what can we do that will actually reproduce results? What of what they're doing that they don't even realize is making the difference? So that's how it started.
Got it. And so how can salespeople actually use NLP to better their lives, have better relationships,
Right.
sell more stuff, which is what we all want?
Right, right. Well, in the beginning, part of why NLP got a bad name is in the beginning, some people took some of the tools and kind of misused them. Like some of the tools are about how you establish communication and safety and trust with people. Because if you're going to change stuff, they need to feel safe because our systems are designed to resist change. And so there were some people in the beginning who took the what's called the rapport skills and they just rebranded them as sales packages, as how to sell and using this to sell um, by making people feel safe. The problem with that is what those tools do is they actually do create a connection. But so when there's a connection, there's communication that happens on multiple channels. And so if someone was just using those tools to make somebody feel safe so they could convince them to buy, and their intentions were not mutually beneficial, let's say, basically, those intentions would come through on some level when that connection was established. So they might sell more, but people would have this weird feeling about it. And so it became, NLP got a reputation for being manipulative, but it was actually just a misuse of the tools.
Mm.
So those tools are effective, but the most effective tools by far are the tools that help you to recognize the place where you have beliefs about yourself or the world or money that are in the way and revising those to beliefs that work better. When you do that, then you don't have to try to manipulate people. You don't have to use fear, which is a lot of people use fear as a sales tactic. You don't have to use fear. You don't have to work so hard. Actually, it's a myth that you have to work hard to make money. It's a myth that is so prevalent in our culture. There are people who are working their buns off, not making any money. And there are people making a bunch of money, not working that hard. It is not about how hard or how much you work. It's the biggest myth. And so one of the things that people notice the most when they do my workshops or do this work is that their income often doubles, triples, or more. And they'll say to me, I'm not doing anything differently. Like they're genuinely confused, like how it's happening. In fact, often they work less and they make more because we really think it is about what we do. And that is the smallest factor in what we experience is what we physically do. Is how much effort we put in is probably the smallest factor. You don't have to talk to 100 people. You only need to talk to the right people. And so when you can get the beliefs sorted out, beliefs that we can talk more. I'll pause for a minute in case you have questions about what I've said so far.
Oh, keep going.
Okay.
This is good stuff.
Yeah. Some of the most common beliefs. You have to work hard to make money. It's a numbers game. Actually, it's not a numbers game. It's a belief game. And if you believe it's a numbers game, it will be a numbers game. But I'll tell you what works out to be about a numbers game is none of us have one belief about anything. All of us have multiple contradictory beliefs. And there is nothing in our system, because I'll talk about the details later if you like. There is nothing in our system, though, that is saying, no, you can't believe both those things. Those are contradictory. What happens is when we have contradictory beliefs, as all of us do, I'm going to say all of us do, we get contradictory results because we have contradictory beliefs. And so it becomes...
I'm going to stop you for a second. Yeah. So would an example of that be me thinking, I'm an incredibly great sales trainer and coach. I'm also a freaking idiot.
Yeah. Or life is good. And also life is dangerous. Life is scary. Life is uncertain, right? Money is great. And money is also evil, or money is greedy, or, I want to help people, but I'm also selfish. We're just riddled with all these beliefs about the world and ourselves that are contradictory. And when it comes to money, there has been so much heaped onto money that's actually not about money. It's about fear. The problems that result in people's pursuit of money are about fear, not money. Fear of not having enough, whether it's not enough sustenance, not enough protection, not enough power, not enough control. It all comes down to fear of not having enough. That's what makes people act what we would call badly. It's not about greed. Is just fear of not having enough power, control, or safety.
Hmm.
So when you address those fears and that's not running, then it's an entirely different game. Then it becomes about the fun of it, the joy of it, the expansion of it, the mutual love and growth of it. And that's a much better conversation to have.
So if I'm hearing you right, it's less about what we do and more about what we think and believe.
Absolutely. Because we do not experience the world as it is. We experience a highly distorted, filtered version of the world. And what our brain uses to filter our perception and our experience is our belief systems. And so one of the things that will happen when I'm working with somebody is when a big belief shifts, it seems as though overnight everybody in the world behaves differently. And people will email me that. They'll say, all of a sudden, everybody's behaving differently. What happened? It's like, well, the filter changed. And so the people think these filters are, oh, yeah, that's kind of interesting. Maybe it has something to do. It has everything to do with what we experience. It has how safe we feel in the world, how loved we feel, how safe it is for us to love and connect. How worthy we feel is the biggest limitation to us experiencing good things in life. And one of the things that comes up for salespeople over and over and over again, because almost none of us have a really robust sense of our worth. And we will not let ourselves have more than we think we deserve. And what we think we deserve is completely related to what we think we're worth. So if our self-worth is like shaky, then our results will be shaky. Or if we get a lot of one thing, say we make a lot of money, we will punish ourselves or even it out by punishing ourselves someplace else. Our relationships will blow up. Our health will suffer. Right? The whole, well, you can't have it all. Well, if your beliefs, especially if your sense of deserving really gets updated, because sadly, our sense of what we deserve is in place by age three. So I guarantee you that what you think you deserve and how worthy and enough you feel is not an accurate assessment because it was made by a 3-year-old at best, if not younger.
Wow. So
In response to the world they grew up in. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask the question that probably everybody listening is wanting me to ask. So how do we change that? I mean,
Yeah.
we grew up hearing things from our parents and
Yes.
the world around. Money doesn't grow on trees. Money is
Yes.
scarce.
Yes.
All that stuff that is the programming that we hear.
Yeah.
I mean, do we have to have another book, another seminar pace? I mean, how do we can we change it ourselves? And if so, how do we actually do that?
Yeah. Well, changing it. So this is a longer answer. Is that okay? Okay.
We have 47 minutes left.
Okay, good. Because to do that, you sort of need to understand how your brain works. And most of us never got a user manual, never, right? We think of our brain usually as a cerebral cortex, big shiny lobes up there we're so very proud of, like to, lord over the rest of the animal kingdom. But that's the cerebral cortex, the wrinkly things, the more wrinkles you have, the better, supposedly. That's what does abstract thought and meaning and creativity and time and consequences. That's all up here. The cerebral cortex, however, that part of our brain that we're so attached to is not fully developed until, for women, somewhere between 20 and 25, and for men, somewhere between 25 and 30, or as my friend Carl says, somewhere between 30 and death. Like it's the last part of the brain to come online. And so it's why they won't rent cars to people who are under 25, because their brains just are not fully developed yet. They don't really compute consequences well. And so they have actuarial tables which tell them, no, after 25, a whole lot less accidents, okay? Your emotions come online somewhere, in our experience, somewhere in utero. And then there's the oldest part of the brain. Some people call it the reptile brain, fully functional in utero. We share this with every creature on the planet. It does not care if you're alive. It only cares. It doesn't care if you're happy. It only cares if you're alive. This part cares if you're happy. This part only cares that you're alive. And so how our worldview gets formed, because human beings, there's something called bridge neural pathways. In animals, that's what we call instinct. As humans, we have less of those than any other species, which means we make up almost all of our patterning in response to the environment we come into. Okay. So it makes us incredibly adaptable for the first 3 years. But somewhere between 3 to 6, there's a big pruning at 3 years old. Your brain gets rid of 2/3 of the neurons. The ones it keeps are the ones that are most in play. And then we have more beliefs that form, but most of our beliefs are done by age 6. So the way beliefs start is there's like, can start even in the utero. There's this little like being kind of floating around there in the amniotic fluid. There is no consciousness. There's no conscious awareness yet. There is experience. There's just experience. And so they are having experience and they're existing. And those two things become associated. So if you've ever had a restaurant you really like, you've been many, many times, and then one time you go and you get a bad clam or a bad shrimp, right? You get food poisoning. Every time afterwards you think of that restaurant, what happens?
I don't think I should go. I might get sick.
Yeah, it's just like, ugh. It's a visceral sort of automatic, like, ugh. So when that's a wired association now. That restaurant and those are like connected now. So when we're in the womb there, if there is, like, say, stress for one or both parents, there's fear or there's anger, the little creature the little being in the womb feels that the way we would feel the weather, but they feel that experience and they start to makes associations. Oh, they'll associate, they always make it personal. I'm here, things are stressful, must be related. Maybe I'm the cause of stress. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm too much. Or maybe life is stressful. Maybe life is difficult. Maybe life is not, maybe life is scary. And so this starts happening even in the womb, just pure association with no thought. And not all the associations are bad, because not every moment that we were in the womb, even the most damaged parents have to sleep sometimes, right? So sometimes there is a experience of like, maybe I'm okay. But we start accumulating all these associations, even in the womb. And then after we come out in our interactions with our parents, and they're very one-sided for a while, because there's really not much you can do as an infant. But the infant starts making associations. I'm here. This is how the world is. This is how those folks are. This is how they're treating me. And it just starts kind of laying down association after association after association. There is nothing running for children that can say, my parents seem to be experiencing limitations in their self-expression and in their sense of enoughness. How sad. I hope that works out for them. There's nothing in there that can do that. It's like, oh my God, they're angry, they're upset, they're scared. It must be me. So, and here's one unique thing about being human. If let's say we have an human infant and a kitten. If there is an adult who yells at the infant and the kitten will think there's something wrong with that person. The infant will think there's something wrong with me. If the same adult turns and yells at another adult, the kitten will think there's something really wrong with that person. The human will still think, even though they're yelling at somebody else, there's something wrong with me. Because they take credit and blame for everything. They have no sense of themselves as a distinct entity. And so what happens is we start accumulating all these associations about life, about how life flows, about how much we deserve, about how easy life and fun life can be or not. And a lot of it is just through watching the people that we grew up with. What are they experiencing? Because they seem to have godlike powers. They can do things we can't. And so then what happens is that becomes the map for the rest of life. And somewhere between 3 and 6, that map gets kind of password protected. Like it's a certain area of the brain that holds that patterning, and it is designed to resist change. Unlike your phone, your brain is not designed to update itself. So as a child grows and their brain develops and we get older, we start to encounter other experiences, other possibilities, but that does not reach the early parts of the brain where the fundamental wiring is. It's a little like if you're 40 years old, let's say, imagine a 40-story building. And imagine you want the building is shaky, right? Because there's some stuff in the foundation, in the basement, that's out of alignment. And so what you do is you remodel the penthouse. This is what most people do. They remodel the penthouse. They try and work from here. They go to a workshop. They try to use their conscious mind to make a decision when the stuff that's stuck is in the basement. and is designed to resist being changed. And so it's why change is so hard for people. So many people say, I did all this therapy and I took these workshops and nothing shifted. It's because to actually change it, you have to access the parts of the brain that were developing at the time when it got laid down. And so this is what NLP allows us to do. And so what I did when I created my workshops was I took a lot of those tools that will provide both access to the places where the patterning is stored, and then techniques that allow to create new associations between what the adult mind knows and wants with that very early patterning, to revise it at the foundational level so that it's automatically different, like rewriting software. Like once you rewrite software, the software just runs differently. Like you don't have to do affirmations, you are powerful software, right? You rewrite it, it runs differently. You don't have to hold it accountable, right? Or shame it. Once it's rewritten, it runs differently. You don't have to use willpower to hold the changes in place, right? These are all the things that we try to do to get ourselves to change, but they're not effective for very long. Shame can temporarily force us into something, so can willpower. But as soon as you take your foot off the accelerator, the old patterning just reasserts itself. You may have noticed.
So it's almost like we're doomed unless we can find a way to change the operating system.
Well, doomed is a big word, but
doomed to follow the same pattern over and over.
I mean, it's how it's designed. It's how it's designed. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that the people who are listening and watching and who hear this on the replay are getting value out of it. For me, you're speaking directly to me, because I'm a guy who has spent tens of thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours in seminar rooms, and I'm a junkie for that stuff. I love personal development. But none of them ever produced a lasting change, or none of them ever helped me to produce a lasting change in my life. When I met and started working with an incredible coach, her name is Liz Bentley. She it's so funny. She said, look, don't come to me if you're looking to make more money. However, everybody who I work with makes more money, because what she helps you do is get to the bottom of what's going on. And she calls herself a transformational coach, and her job is to make you the best version of yourself. And I can tell you that after working with her, I did start making more money. And my relationship, you said something earlier and I forgot what it was, but it brought this up. My relationship with my ex-wife, which was acrimonious. I went through a horrible divorce and terrible relationship for many, many years. It changed in an instant when I changed the way I was thinking. Oh, I know what you said, that the people around them showed up differently. But what showed up differently, we now have a wonderful relationship, and it had nothing to do with her. It was really me realizing that I was at least 50% responsible, and I've been blaming her for everything. At least 50% responsible for everything that had gone on in our marriage that didn't work well, and why we were divorced. And when I expressed that to her and apologized, in an instant, she became different. Not really, but our relationship shifted in a moment. And let me just acknowledge some people. Good morning to Jason Collins. He says he loves It's Not How Hard You Work. He says cue an existential crisis. Mitch Cole, my favorite marketing guy, says I like to work less and make more. Tavia Sharp, a brilliant stylist. She loves this conversation. And Jason wants to know, is this sales coaching or a masterclass in psychology? Thank you for introducing us to Michelle. And finally, Amber Diana, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, one of my absolute favorite subjects. Wow. So it's not just me. I think everybody's loving what you're having to say. So how can we change without struggle?
Right.
And what is repatterning?
Right. Well, our beliefs are held in our neural nets. So we have neurological nets that are stabilized, as I said, bridge pathways. And I'm sorry if it sounds so psychological, but I just want people to understand a little bit about how your brain works, so you know that you're not broken, you're not lazy, you're not stupid. If you're not getting the results you want, it's because you have patterning in the way. That's the worst we can say about anybody. They have patterning in the way, old patterning, held in the neural nets. And so when we started doing this work, science said that neuroplasticity was not possible, but we were using these tools to actually create new neural nets, to rewire things. Neurons that fire together, wire together. We were using these techniques to rewire stuff. And so, and then somewhere after we'd been doing it for a while, sometime in the late 90s, science came out with this neuroplasticity is possible. It's like, well, yes, it is. And so this is a way of using the way your brain operates and how we learn and make associations, using it to automate some new things, because the beliefs we have that are in the way are automated. Like, you never have to wake up in the morning and get your limitations to fire up, right? They run on autopilot. So wouldn't it be nice if what was running on autopilot was supporting what you want instead of running interference?
Yes, that would be
Yeah.
lovely. And by
Yeah.
the way, I am a guy who, for the first 10 minutes of my morning, am doing affirmations.
Okay.
And
Well,
it's
you
not
know
that
what?
I don't like it, but I sure would like to wake up and automatically not have to do that. And just,
Yeah. Yeah, because we never do an affirmation about something we already believe, right? That would be ridiculous. Why would you affirm something? Like, do you wake up in the morning and say, I'm a man? Well, actually, for men, there is a little bit that goes along with what it means to be a man, right? But the things that we absolutely know about ourselves or assume about ourselves or the world, we don't affirm. We affirm stuff we're trying to believe. And so if we don't believe something, we have beliefs running contrary to it. And so if you have, you're consciously, you can pay attention to 5 to 9 things at a time. And I promise I'll try and cut out the psychological lecture later. But unconsciously, your brain processes upwards of 2 million things per second, 2 million per second versus 5 to 9. So really, all our processing power is in our subconscious. And so if you have beliefs running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you have to work hard, you're not enough, people will find out you're not enough. If you have that running 24 hours a day, and there you are in your morning with your affirmations for a few minutes, it's not that it does nothing, but the sheer amount, the sheer volume of noise of not enough, work hard, makes it almost impossible for the affirmations to do anything. If, however, what's running more and more automatically is life is good, you're okay, the universe wants good things for you, like, it's safe to be okay. You can have what you want. You don't have to sacrifice to have what you want. You can be blessed in many ways. If that's starting to run automatically, then it's an entirely different experience going through your day.
so I guess the next question is, how do we get that to run automatically?
Right. Well, and that's the thing, and that's what the tools that I have in my workshop, that's what they're for, because I knew not everybody's going to be able to come work with me privately, and that would be a very long list of people. And so, although the good news is, when you do this work correctly, people don't have to keep coming back week after week. As a matter of fact, we don't even recommend it. It's the kind of thing where you put in a chunk of change, you let them integrate for a while and see what happens. And then if there's more that needs to happen later, then you do more. But it's not the kind of like, yes, we'll be seeing each other once a week for 5 years. No, this is like, if you've got somebody who knows how to rewrite your software, you're not visiting them every day. So the question was, how do we do it? So it's hard to do on yourself. I will tell you, I've been doing this work since 1995. I've been doing it professionally. I started studying in 94. And when I have something big up, I go to somebody else, because if you had it, you wouldn't want to perform brain surgery on yourself, right? That's not a place where you would get the Idiot's Guide to Brain Surgery, set up a table in your backyard and wing it. It's because you can't see your own stuff from inside it. But what I did was I included some of my favorite tools in the book, because I know some people will just never even show up at a seminar. But I can get the most work done with people typically when they come to on this topic, when they come to my Money Magic seminar. And so I have people who've taken it like 11 times, not because every time it takes them from where they are to the next place. Right? And life gets better each time and easier. We take off another layer of beliefs. You don't want all your beliefs to change at once. Like, that would be too much. People end up in lockdown facilities if all their beliefs change at once, because especially our beliefs about ourselves, our identity beliefs, those need to change in layers over time, or we feel crazy. We don't have a way to recognize ourselves. But even starting to take down kind of layers of that make a huge difference in our daily lived experience. Yeah.
Wow. I know when I was on your website looking, doing research, and I was looking at your list of seminars, I'm like, yep, I want to do that one. That want to do them all. I mean, just great stuff. What are family systems and family constellations? I was fascinated.
Yes. Yes, this is the other big factor in what we will let ourselves experience. The two biggest factors are our beliefs about ourselves and the world, and then something called unconscious family loyalties. So, as human beings, one of our strongest drives is the drive to belong, right? People will die to belong. Otherwise, war would not be possible. So, and sadly, human beings compute their belonging in its crudest form. Human beings compute their belonging in terms of conformity. When we are like the people we come from, we feel like we belong. When we are different, our belonging feels threatened. The old one of these things is not like the other. This is usually how human beings compute belonging. So the black sheep, right, is someone who's different from the rest of the family, and they invariably feel like they don't belong, or they're literally cast out. So when a child is conceived into a system, and this does run along biological lines, whether the child knows their biological parents or not, this runs down biological lines. When a child is conceived into a family system, there's a drive to want to belong to the family system, innate. Okay. And there is also this love for the family system. So there's never been a child born in the history of humanity who did not want to heal their family. There's also never been a child born in the history of humanity who has pulled it off. But everybody tries, and they try in predictable ways. And the first way, when a child comes into a system, they feel the pain in the family system. And they feel the pain even of people who aren't even alive anymore still. And they're not tracking time yet. Time comes online much later. It's up there in the prefrontals. And so if you try and tell a 2-year-old 5 minutes from now, they have no concept of what that is. They have now and not now, which is never. It's sort of the only concept they have. So a kid comes into the system, they feel the pain, they want to make it better. And their first move is always to try to use love to heal the family. I will love them so much that it will all be okay. And because their love is so huge and so pure, and because they have zero sense of proportion, this feels reasonable. Of course it will work. Why wouldn't it work? It never works. If it works, every single parent would be healed upon the birth of their first child. It would be like, oh, dear, I thought I was anxious and attachment avoidant, and I thought you were a borderline alcoholic with narcissistic tendencies, but we had a baby and it's all fine. Like, childbirth would be the recommended form of personal development if it actually worked. Have a problem? Have a baby. It'll fix it all. It never works.
And does it not work because you can't change anybody else? You can only change yourself.
Exactly. The stuff that was going on for your parents was wired in decades before you got here. And nothing you do is going to change their wiring. Only they can change their wiring.
Yeah, that was a challenging lesson for me to get with my coach, who repeated over and over, you can only change the person in the mirror.
Yes.
Wow.
It is heartbreaking, but it is true. And so what happens is so much of our energy gets focused on trying to make it better for them. So we try to love the pain into submission. That never works. Then the kid tries to take the pain from them. Here, I will have the problem so they can be okay. I will be the one who is stressed and anxious. I will be the one who struggles and suffers. Now, the thing is, if it worked, maybe it would be worth it. But you can no more take somebody else's pain from them than you can take their irritable bowel syndrome from them. I will have this so you can be okay. It doesn't work that way. All you can do is clone it. And so the last thing kids do is like, okay, well, then I won't have it too much better than you. Because if we have it better than the people we come from, we feel guilty. I mean, if you go out with a group of friends to a restaurant, a good restaurant, and your food comes first, and you know their food is coming. You know their food is coming, but yours comes first. How weird is it for you to start eating, even though they're like, no, go on, don't let it get cold. It just feels wrong on really primal levels for us to have something when our tribe doesn't. And so this is the biggest limitation. If our parents struggled or our ancestors struggled, it feels wrong for us to not struggle. If our ancestors survived trauma, massacres, it feels wrong for us to be happy and safe and alive on some very fundamental levels. And so what happens is we end up needlessly limiting ourselves or replicating their struggles so that on very unconscious, nobody does this consciously, that would be crazy, but so that we don't have it too much better. I had a guy who came to me with a real intense gambling problem, and he flat out said to me, "It's like I'm trying to lose my house." And when he said that, I thought, okay, who lost their house? And this is a generational thing, by the way. This can run for generations. His family had come from Mexico to the U.S. when just in the early 1930s. And so they were living next to a Japanese family just outside of Los Angeles. And in 1942, after Pearl Harbor, the Japanese family was forced by the government, into an internment camp, and his family got their house. Now, they were friends. They didn't scam them out of it, but they profited at that family's expense, which feels on levels, we feel guilty about that. And so 70 years later, he was trying to lose his house to kind of balance out the ledger sheet. Now, that does nothing for that family, right? That Japanese family. But there is so much of this. I was working with this guy. He said to me, "It's like I'm trying to get my business to fail." And I said, "Whose business failed?" And he just looked at me and went, "My dad's." Because his dad's business had failed. It felt wrong for some part of him to really thrive.
Wow.
Yeah.
Again, I hope that everybody listening is getting something out of this, because I really do feel like it's a personal seminar. It's just everything's going through my head. Look, I make a lot more money than my family ever did, except I have this up and down thing with it. And like I said, I've been in millions of seminars, and Tony Robbins, another NLP practitioner, describes it as a thermostat, that when it comes to money, for most of us, it's like a thermostat. We get to a certain level, and then we start saying, "Oh, no, can't get warmer than that. We got to do something to get rid of it." And it's certainly never been on a conscious level for me, but that really, it's been a series of ups and downs and ups and downs. And I know at my age, I'm certainly tired of the roller coaster.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't heard that I've never been to a Tony Robbins seminar, strangely, but the analogy I usually use is a flight. What do they call it? Autopilot. They will set a flight at cruise control for a certain altitude. Most of us have a financial altitude with where it's okay for us to be this high, but no higher. And so that's one of the things that I end up working with people so often on, is raising what's survivable, like what altitude, what cruising altitude can be survivable and cheerful for them.
Yeah. Except most of us really aren't just looking to survive. I mean, I think we all want to thrive.
What would be the point of coming here to just survive? Yeah. So, and it's not always either about money too, because if people have, it's important that we recognize the beliefs about how happy we can be, how much life can work for us, how easily things can work out on everybody's behalf. Because if you make a lot of money, but you still got a lot of fears running, I have clients who sold their company for $1 billion who are riddled with anxiety, right? They still don't feel safe. And so cleaning up the beliefs about our safety and how safe we are, how safe life is, how safe the world is, how much we deserve, how what's possible, how money can flow for us. When you start to do all that, then it becomes an entirely different experience of being alive, of being in the world, of loving, of sharing. Entirely different.
Wow. So many, if not most people, we wake up, we go to work, we come home, we eat dinner, and then we go to sleep, and we do it all again the next day. And we pray for the weekend to come and for the week or two of vacation that we take, over and over and over again. But for some people, there's clearly more. Something else is going on for them. How do we get clear on what we really want most in life?
Right. Well, we'll ask one of the questions we ask people. They'll say, well, I'll have people say, well, I want to make, I want to make 50,000 a month, or I want to make 500,000 a month. And I will say, okay, because what will having that do for you? And I say, oh, I'll hit my goal. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And what will having that do for you? And when you start asking that question, what will having that do for you? It often comes down to, well, then I'll feel safe, or then I'll feel enough, or then I'll feel okay. Or, sometimes it's like, then I can actually live in the place I want to live. And it's like, okay, did you want to make the money, or do you want to live in the place you want to live? Because they might not be related. You might be able to live the place you want to live regardless of the money. And that amount of money might not ensure you could live in the place you want. So what is it you really want? This is why I keep asking, What will having it do for you? What do you imagine that is going to make possible? Because quite often we've come up with this 15-year plan of all these things we think we need to do, all these benchmarks we think we need to hit, goals we need to, so that then we can have this thing or these things, when what we really want is these things. And so what if you could have those much sooner and much easier than this 15-year plan you've laid out for yourself, right? So that's the question we start with. What will having that do for you? What will having that do for you, right? What good thing comes from that?
Here's what Jason says. Reaching my goals will allow my wife to work if she wants to, not because we need her income.
Okay. So, and there's a little bit of a trickiness in there because there's a little bit of trying to take care of somebody else's patterning, right? Like basically try to make somebody happy. Who's her, so because sometimes people with if Jason's wife has patterning, was it Jason?
Jason,
Anyway,
yes.
okay. If Jason's wife has patterning to have to work hard, he could reach his goals, and it's possible she still wouldn't get to do what she wanted to do, right? So there is a little bit of her belief structures in there too. And so many men take on the responsibility of trying to make it better for everybody, right? And they can provide financially, but they can't necessarily change other people's patterning. So if you could reach your goal, actually, if your wife didn't have to work, what will having that do for you, Jason, is what I would ask. What will having that do for you? Because
there's another one. Mitch says, I can take a vacation without having to stress out that I'm not at work.
Right. So, and what if you could take a vacation without having to stress about work or money? Like, wouldn't that be nice? Right. And it's not that you have to, that we're saying either or, but so many times I had a woman, she took my online money magic course. She wasn't working and she thought but there were things she wanted and she thought she needed to work to have these things. She had a list of 15 things. By the end of the course, she was still not working, but every single thing on her list had come to her magically some other way. Somebody gave her a car. People gave her this vacation. People in the place she was going on vacation said, oh, use our house in Maui. Like every single thing she wanted showed up within the 10 weeks of the class without her having to do all the stuff she thought she had to do. Right? Powerful. There's a million ways that the stuff that we want can come about. And we get very, very tunnel vision on, well, I need to make money to do it. We get really lazy about money will do it. Whereas there's a million ways our lives can work out beautifully.
Well, to a certain extent, we need money, don't we?
Well, I mean, it is part of how we secure our safety in the world. Yes. Right. And there are so many ways. Like, so we don't need nearly as much as we think we do, is the thing. I'll have people, I need to make $1 million a month. And sometimes it's never enough. Like a lot of times they can never imagine making enough money because they can always imagine something else that could go wrong or something else they could want in the future. So a lot of people are trying to prophylactically get as much money as they might need to cover every possible thing that could go wrong in their future and every possible thing they might want all at once ahead of time. Now, here's a conversation no one has ever had. No one has ever sat down with an oxygen planner in their 40s to see how much oxygen are you going to need for the rest of your life. You're going to work out a lot. You're going to watch scary movies. You're going to need to bankroll more. Like nobody does that. We assume it will be there for us when we need it. Sometimes we need more. Sometimes we need less. But nobody, well, I shouldn't say nobody. Very few people are stockpiling oxygen for a doomsday scenario. And so, but we do this with money. We try to stockpile it as though there's not enough. You got to protect it. You got to make sure you got enough for anything bad that could go wrong. Now, the thing is, there's no end to that because people can stockpile a bunch of money and then a market collapses, right? The thing about the people who've taken my workshops is when there's a global financial crisis, they do fine because their beliefs have shifted. And so it's like their system automatically reroutes and somehow they're okay. There's a disaster here. We had some really horrific fires up where I am a couple years back. And It was so fascinating. It was like a tornado. The first one was like a tornado of fire. It was fire moving at 60 miles an hour. And it just gutted a section of the county where I am. I had a bunch of people who had taken my class, and of the people who had taken my class, only 2 people lost their houses. The rest were somehow spared. And the 2 people who lost it, I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Both of them said the same thing to me. They actually said, "Actually, it kind of worked out." They said, because one of them, it was like, you know what, the insurance money from that let me actually rebuild it in the way that I want it. And the other person said, "I've been wanting to get rid of that house for years, but my sister wouldn't sell." So when your beliefs are in alignment with where you want to go and vice versa, then it almost doesn't matter what the world is doing. Like, things will work out somehow. And that's a way to live. Sorry, go ahead.
What popped into my head was Jeff Bezos is probably a very scared child then.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Look, I'm fully in favor of people making as much money as they want to, but there's really no reason for having hundreds of billions of dollars while the people that work for you are starving.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very zero-sum way of thinking. A lot of people run a zero-sum around money. Like, there's only so much, and what one person has takes away from what's available for everyone else. A lot of people run that around money. Money is not actually a zero-sum. There is not a finite amount of money in the world. You ask anybody, how much money is there in the world? Anybody in the finance industry, nobody knows, because it's based on a mass hallucination of value, and there are no limits on value. And so, yeah, so health, wealth, and happiness. There are no limits on how many people can be healthy. It's not like if somebody's really healthy, they're using up all the health. There's no limits on how many people can be happy. "Oh, I've been so happy, I must be bumming the people of Darfur out." That's not how that operates. And the same is true of wealth. But as long as we're running the zero mindset and the fear, then people hoard. They hoard money. And that's where shortage comes from. You remember the pandemic? We had enough toilet paper, but all of a sudden everybody got afraid there wasn't toilet paper. And then we didn't have enough toilet paper for a while. It was the fear, the hoarding. It was not an actual shortage.
Yeah. I don't know, stuff keeps popping into my head. And what popped into my head was how my grandmother and my mom used to tell me, you got to finish everything on your plate because children are starving in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I never understood why me eating my food was going to affect them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It does nothing. And like, you depriving yourself of something doesn't necessarily make it better for people in Africa. If you take a pay cut, that money isn't necessarily going to someone needy. It's going to somebody who's saying, like, fine, I'll take it. Right. Yeah.
I want to switch up here because I could talk to you about money all day, obviously. Let me just answer a couple of people. Amber, I can't let your friend in right now because I'm right in the middle of the session, but I will explain. If she joins the Sales Pro Network, she can access this video. It'll be right there. And also, we have a YouTube channel called the Sales Pro Network. All the videos are there. You can watch them live as they're happening, and they're all there. Let's see. Salespeople are communicators.
Yes.
And you give a talk called Metaphors for Change.
Yeah.
What's that about? How can salespeople communicate more effectively so that they can help their prospects choose to do business with them?
Yeah. Metaphors for Change. Metaphors is one of the most powerful ways of communicating with people. Our brains love metaphors and stories. And so yeah, if you come to one of my workshops, you'll hear a ton of metaphors and stories. Sometimes it's stories about people, and sometimes it's metaphors like the cruise altitude, et cetera, and so forth. Because we don't change ages, we collect ages. Okay. So if you're 40, there are parts of you that are also 30 and 5 and 3 months old. And so we're a walking conglomeration of ages. And so facts only speak to a very small part of the brain. A very small portion of the brain can track a fact. Our brain is not designed to store facts. It is designed to store experience. And the thing about metaphors is we experience metaphors, whereas facts are just information. We don't experience a fact, but a metaphor, we kind of put ourselves in the middle of. And so, I mean, I could ask people here, how much do you remember of what you learned in the 3rd grade? And it would be fairly small. But if I asked you about the stories you read in the 3rd grade, the movies you saw, it's a very different experience, right? You can recall so much more of it. So our brain is really designed to experience metaphors and stories, to relate it to ourselves. And it's all the different ages of us can participate. If you start throwing a bunch of facts at people, a small part of their adult brain may stay engaged, but the younger parts will check out. When you start telling a story, almost all of the part of the brain sits up and listens. And we remember stories differently. Like after a seminar, people will basically remember 2 things. They'll remember how they felt while it was going on and the stories that were told, and maybe 1 or 2 random facts. But mostly they remember how they felt and the stories. And so stories are one of the best forms of communicating, because they reach us on an emotional level, and they engage all of us.
So that would really explain why I can't remember what I ate for breakfast, but I can remember every song I heard 50 years ago.
Yes,
The
exactly.
songs tell a story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Go ahead,
you
please.
experience a song, right? You experience a song. Our brain is designed to remember experience. That's why they're always telling you the best way to learn a language is immersion in the culture. Because it's one thing to learn, the German word for dog excrement. It's another, if you're in Germany, you step in it and somebody says the word, there's a very visceral association with, okay, got it. I know what the word is now. Stepped in it, lived it. Okay.
Yeah. I've had the same experience because I use a lot of stories when I'm training, because
Mhm.
I believe stories are what make things sticky. And, like when I teach people to cold call, there's a particular story I tell about meeting my boss. And
Mhm.
in that story, I talk about the movie The Wizard of Oz, that when
Mhm.
I met him, it was kind of like The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And they might not remember everything I teach them, but I can tell you, I would bet money that everybody I've ever taught, if I met them in an airport and said, "Do you remember the story I told about when
Mhm.
cold calling?" They say, "Yeah, with The Wizard of Oz, right?"
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
A couple of months ago, and I don't know if you'll remember this, you posted that relationships are the greatest cause of most of our pain and the greatest source of most of our joy. What
Mm.
can we do to reduce the pain and have more joy?
It's kind of the same answer. It's about both the beliefs and the family patterns that are in the way. Because nobody comes to a planet, Jeff, of 8 billion people for alone time. Like that's really poor planning. If you really want alone time, go to the moons of Jupiter. Much better. And so here we are. We're social creatures. So there was a period where a lot of people like to brag, I'm a maverick, I'm a lone wolf. Well, I will tell you, a lone wolf is a sick wolf. Like a lone wolf is a wolf that has been cast out, or something's wrong with that wolf. And it's the same with human beings. We do not thrive in isolation. We are built for connection and community. But when we come in, that whole thing, starting even in the womb, depending on how connection was, how safe it was to connect, like how loved we felt, how loved our parents felt. Because, one of the things about our sense of our worth and deserving is we get a lot of it from our parents, and some of it is what they tell us, but a lot of it is how they relate to themselves. If they don't feel worthy themselves, they can't actually give us, even if they say the right words, they can't give us an experience of worth, because children aren't paying attention to what parents say. They're paying attention to what they do and how they feel. And so if a parent feels worthless, even if they're doing their best to shower their kids with love, on some level, that kid feels they kind of clone off that experience. What was the original question?
I don't remember because I'm so caught up in what you're saying.
Okay.
I hope everybody's getting something out of this
Relationships.
private therapy session.
Yeah.
Because,
Relationships. Yeah. So how much we let other people love us depends on how lovable we think we are. And self-worth. Some people think that arrogance is too much self-worth. Arrogance is not too much self-worth. Arrogance is a lack of self-worth that's sort of inside out, posing as being enough. But people who are arrogant do not actually have a sense of real, true self-worth. Real, true self-worth is like the feeling of being in love. When you're in love, you not only feel good about you and the other person, but everyone looks more beautiful. Everything is rosier, right? That's what the actual experience of real self-worth is like. Is like we feel love for ourselves, we feel love for others, like everything looks like love. And so our relationships are an absolute reflection of how lovable we feel. and how safe it feels to both be loved and let ourselves love. Because if we've experienced heartbreak early on, and so many of us have, then some part of us is not sure that we can survive being loving again or being loved again, either to have it taken away or have it be crushed or betrayed or whatever the experience was. And so based on that kind of whatever happened early, then we limit our connection to people and life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, if you guys would please put in the comments, do you feel like Michelle is speaking directly to you? Because I feel like she's speaking directly to me. Just put in the comments. Yes, she's talking to me, or no, she's not. And by the way, you said something. I mean, you keep plugging me right in. I do sit alone a lot. I always say I like to be alone. I sit at home all the time. But the truth is, and I don't know if I mentioned this when we first met, but I do stand-up comedy. And the truth is, I never feel more alive than when I'm engaged with the audience.
Yeah.
Even though I say all the time, I like being alone. I don't want to be bothered by anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's an interesting phrase. I like being alone. I don't want to be bothered by anyone. It gives a sense that when you were alone early on, it wasn't always the most positive experience, right?
I'd have to take a look at that one. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Bothered. So the bothered implies there's something in there that is kind of not a good thing, right? Somehow it's, and a lot of times kids come up with a belief that this belief is so common. I can't tell you, it's sadly so common. I'll have people fill in the phrase, to be safe, I need to, so many people put be alone. How sad. That is incredibly sad. Or if people think to be loved, they need to be a certain way to make other people happy, then the only way they can truly be themselves is to be alone.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Jason says, I feel singled out. Sometimes I need to be alone to recharge my batteries. And again, I don't want to make this a private session, and we're almost done anyways, but my father was bipolar and beat me with a belt and things like that. So I guess being alone is a way of feeling safe for me. Right. And then in a perfect world, when we hit 18, our system would reopen for renegotiation about some of these really primary beliefs. But unlike your phone, your brain is not designed to update itself. It is designed to stabilize the patterning you've got. So that's why these tools finally give us a chance to revise some of that stuff that's really not serving us or anyone anymore. So I'm so horribly sad that we're out of time, because I could talk to you absolutely all day, and I hope you'll come back. Before we go, though, could you please let people know, how can they get in touch with you if they want to? How can they take your programs? Where can they find you? Sure. My website's the easiest, michellemastersnlp.com. I have a YouTube channel, Michelle Masters NLP. I've made it pretty straightforward there. We have money magic workshops this year, one in a couple weeks in California, near San Francisco. We have one in London, one in Spain in April and May, one in Australia in August, and then an online one in the fall. So there's many ways that people can join the work or work with me privately. Yeah. Anything on the East Coast? Because I'm in New York. Sadly, no. You go to Marbella, Spain, Sun Coast. Why not? I think I have enough points maybe to come out to California and see you there. Okay. All right. Any last tip that you'd like to give everyone? I just wanted to say, the better that your life gets for you, actually, the better it is for everybody, because the more at peace you are, the happier you are, the more fulfilled you are. That has an impact on everyone you come in contact with. When you make life better for you, especially at these foundational levels of who you are and how safe the world can be, then you start to radiate those things and you become part of the wave of things getting better. Wow. So as I said earlier, I've spent a lot of time in seminar rooms doing this stuff, and this hour has been fantastic. Thank you so much for generously sharing your brilliance with us. I hope you will come back. I'll end as I always do, team, as I can get best, holding back my tears. Sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Thank you.